Yeah, so on Friday we went over a bunch of kind of different like Q&A stuff. And something an athlete had like asked me about recently was kind of contextualizing and simplifying the training that we do on a weekly basis and kind of a monthly basis and yearly basis, and looking at like how do we look at what we're doing in a way that makes sense, where we don't need to go into like all of the small details around the running. We can make the goals a little bit bigger and easier to achieve. I think this kind of piggybacks on the idea of like the big percentages training call that we did last week, where we were talking about, just consistency of running. It's kind of at the top, and then you've got, these supporting kind of branches to that, which are always eating enough, always sleeping enough, and working on motivation that comes from within. And I think a part of all of this and how it all fits together, if we're going to simplify and kind of contextualize our training, is to look at how we frame our runs. It's pretty common, I think, for like humans and athletes especially, to really get hung up on all of the little details, and to want to know like, does that target my VO2 max, or is this for lactic threshold? How do I increase aerobic capacity? Like, and to want to know all the little details, like, is it a 730 mile or a 740 mile, or is it like how much rest or how
Can
much
this be a
work?
6.5% grade, or
Yeah.
does it need to be at exactly 6? Is 6.2 okay? I think something that we see a lot, particularly in athletes who maybe struggle with insecurity, is people will overcompensate for maybe perceived lack of in training by overcomplicating things, right? Like, I know for me, when I get nervous about my fitness or like my ability to maybe complete a project, I'll potentially lean a little bit too heavy on like perfection in training. And I think that like discussing these things can help us move away from understanding that there is no perfect training, right? Like you cannot execute perfect training. You're always bringing in some level of fatigue, or like going a little too hard. Like you're not a machine, right? You're a human person. And so we need to train on a human spectrum rather than assuming that there's like a perfect way to train, right? Like even for the most elite athletes, like there's always going to be little gray areas and like nuances to training. So to avoid overcomplicating things and assuming that like, your training is like completely compartmentalized away from your life, which it's not, we really just urge people to not overthink stuff. And a lot of times people will tend to overthink stuff as kind of like an insecurity thing.
Yeah, I think it can be insecurity. Sometimes it can be also curiosity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
and
can be a really
like
positive
a
thing.
strong desire to like really own the thing that you're investing a lot of time in, which is great. I think it's really important to have those understandings. Obviously, as coaches, that's something that we are always reinforcing with ourselves, and making sure that we can tell you at any given time the exact purpose for a workout. I think sometimes it isn't necessarily as important for you to know the full purpose, but to know what the broader purpose is. So that way you don't get overly wrapped up in it, but you can approach it from a healthy mindset. And so, again, I think it's something that we do see with athletes, is like getting hung up on the complexities and then missing the bigger point, and then not getting as much out of the training. So we're really kind of like going to use this call and the call before to help give you guys and the other athletes on the team who will listen to this later just this broader understanding of like, this stuff is simpler than maybe we think, and there are a lot of different ways to the same place, which is why we can kind of look at this from a more of a macro lens than a micro lens. um,
Basically, there's a whole industry built around trying to tell you that your training needs to be more complicated than it does. Like there are so many apps and like training
mhm.
methodologies, and like yeah, we're coaches, so like in a way like we're able to monetize our advanced understanding of the methodologies at work here. but you don't, you don't need to have like an absolute, like to the T understanding of like how ATP works. Like how does, how am I metabolizing fats if I'm running at 730 pace up a 6.2% hill? Like, not important. And I think the overarching kind of takeaway from this call is to not sweat the small stuff and don't
Yeah.
ever let perfection be the enemy of progress.
Totally. Don't sweat the small stuff. And if you don't know something, I would encourage you one to use Google. There are a ton of resources out there, or hit me up or Zoe up, and we can point you to some really good literature and training methodology that exists out there, so you can increase your understanding of everything too. Because again, understanding what you're doing, it's really important, but we want everyone to start from this broader place of understanding, and then given you understand fully what you're doing in these broader terms, then you can dive in a little bit deeper, just a little bit at a time. If you go in too deep too quickly, you may overwhelm yourself with all of the information and then not get as much out of it, or you can end up burning yourself out on all of that.
Or a lot of times we'll just see athletes that just get hung up on small stuff, like, can I send you a video of my form? Like, what's my foot strike like? Oh my gosh, like, and it's like, well, most studies show that you probably shouldn't concern yourself with your form or foot strike unless there's like risk of injury and some other professional has told you to concern yourself with those things. It's like, a lot of times, like, our brains just tend to overemphasize the small things because it's really scary to try to contextualize the big things, like running 5 days a week for years and years and years.
So, in order to kind of frame this stuff, I like to break it down into 5 categories. You have your easy run, you have your kind of steady Freddy run. That's what I like to call like the flow state run. You have your hills, strides, and then your workout days. Um, and since easy runs make up the largest percentage of all of your training, we'll kind of briefly talk about that. So yeah, what is the easy run? Why is it important? The easy run is a run that is 100% conversational. I love to think about this in terms of group runs. When you go out and you're meeting up with your group to run, for me, the whole purpose of that is to be able to talk and socialize with people. So what that means is like 3 to 4 sentences conversational without having to like reduce your output levels or your effort, and without like gasping for air. So you should be able to hold a fairly normal conversation. Would you agree?
Yeah. I always tell my athletes to err. Like, if you have to ask, am I running easy enough? Then like maybe there's some room to slow down. I also like to say that as long as you're technically moving forward, you really can't go too slow. I think the caveats there are that, like, at like 15 or 16-minute miles, when form starts to break down and really the function starts to mirror walking more than it does the physiology of running, then there might be room for like, different kinds of like a walk run regimen, or just like investigating what's going on there. But you really can't run too slow. If you look at the training methods of like super elite marathoners, those guys run 9-minute pace, right? And I mean, they're racing marathons at like sub 5-minute pace. So you can't run too slow to reap the benefits of aerobic adaptation.
And
it doesn't matter. There's no one on our team who isn't running aerobic events, right? Like, the only events that are not purely aerobic, essentially, or like not majority aerobic, would be like the 50-yard dash,
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a ton of purely track athletes on our team competing at the Olympic level. So if you're running 5Ks, that's aerobic. Your training needs to be mostly aerobic. And I think a lot of times workouts are fun and sexy, and they kind of suck all the air out of the room and make it seem like easy running isn't the most important thing, but it is absolutely the most important part of your running.
Yeah, and why is easy so important? And I think sometimes this is counterintuitive to what we've been taught about how to live our lives, how to train. Everything is like high intensity and win at all cost. But by going easier, we're actually, because we're at a lower heart rate, we're engaging the aerobic system, so aerobic threshold and below. And this would be the only time I really mention a specific energy system, like aerobic threshold and below. The purpose of that is we're building denser capillary beds. We're increasing the ability of our mitochondria to produce ATP at more efficient levels, and that's
recruitment
even
of slow twitch fibers.
Exactly, building slow twitch muscle fibers, which are the ones that you want because they don't tire as quickly as opposed to fast twitch. And anyways, without overstating,
without overcomplicating
that,
our talk about simplicity.
Go ahead, Zoe, please.
Yeah, I just think it kind of speaks to the idea that, like, once again, like, a lot of times we'll have people come into the program and they'll want to know, like, what exact heart rate their easy day should be at, or like what cadence and like what turnover, and like, should I run with a metronome? And my answer would be like, just run chill, just be chill. If you're not sure if you're going chill enough, then you're not chill enough. Just chill.
Just chill out.
Just be chill. Be more chill.
I like to think about it as a forever effort. So when I
think
go
about
out there and run, it's like how
like
can I hold this for hours and hours?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to like sing a few songs out to yourself, a few lines from a song that you're listening to. That's something that I do and people think is weird, but you know, you can also talk to yourself out there and just check in and make sure you're at that conversational effort, because if you're not, you will disproportionately recruit the muscle fibers that you don't want, and you won't work on the things that we just mentioned, like the denser capillary beds, which you guys can dive into this through Google and whatnot, but very, very important. Also, your mitochondria development, your cardiac stroke, and all of these things that benefit from being at a lower heart rate. Kristen says, she tells her athletes that if they can't belt out Hamilton show tunes or Adele, they're running too fast, and I would agree.
It's really the most scientific way to know. You know, throw away your heart rate monitor and buy the Hamilton soundtrack.
Sweet, yeah, cool. That would be tough. I'd have to run much slower to get Hamilton out. But I'm just
TJ was a reluctant Hamilton convert.
Yeah, I'm into it now though. That was pretty good. All right. Number 2, the Steady Freddy run, which is, I like to call it Steady Freddy.
I call it easy mod. Like
easy mod.
Usually when I cue my athletes, I'll say easy mod, which isn't as fun.
Easy mod's not as fun, but that's also what I would tell you guys as well. So what is the easy moderate run? Basically, this is kind of your flow state run. So this is when you're out on a long run and you've got the tunes going and you are starting to feel like you're really getting into like the effort, and your intensity creeps up a little bit and you're like easy moderate, maybe a little bit moderate. I would say in terms of how many sentences you can speak, 2 sentences. It's conversational, but it's not, you know, chatty. It's that really steady effort where you're kind of riding like the top of a crest of a wave, and you know if you turn it up a little bit, fatigue is going to set in and that effort is no longer sustainable. And we're still talking about an effort that is sustainable for more than an hour. So we're not
still purely aerobic.
It's very aerobic. It is at aerobic threshold or below. But
a lot
it's
of
that
times,
steady effort, 2 sentences conversational. This can apply to a group run setting, but if you want to be chit chatty, it's going to be more difficult.
Yeah, I use this a lot of times in my athletes' long runs, particularly when they're preparing for races. I like it because it prevents lollygagging. I think, you know, a lot of us, when we go out on our long run, you know, we'll get until, and there's a time and a place for it, right? Like a lot of times on a long run, like eat your snacks, like take a picture, just like chill. And then there's other times where we kind of want to get in that mentality of like, you know, you got to rip your goo packet and go. And like, you know, we're not taking a photo. We're going to like, you know, run over the top. We're going to put the work in. We're just going to avoid lollygagging. We're not racing the long run. We're not tempoing it, but we're also not taking it purely easy. And this is kind of like it's a tough effort level to be in, but it's one of those things that like, you know, it's like, you know it when you see it, but you also don't want to do it too often, because if you do too many if you err on the side of easy mod more often than just easy, you're still undermining your chances at aerobic development.
Yeah, you could be going a little too hard maybe, or kind of threading a fine line.
Yeah, you could be upping your risk. Any kind of intensity raises the risk of injury necessarily. Right. So we're just, you know, balancing these things is just kind of like playing with fire. It's like, all right, sometimes you do want to kind of hold your hand to the flame a little bit. You don't want to just stick your hand in every single day.
The reason we don't want to run at this effort level every day is because the impact forces are a little bit greater because you're going faster. But the benefit is when you're responding to that flow, this helps you to achieve breakthroughs later in your training by getting you a little bit more comfortable going fast, so that eventually what was your kind of steady Freddy or, flow state effort level feeling will eventually become your easy effort over, several months of training and practice. So although, this can sometimes be a prescribed effort in a long run to add some focus and intention, I think sometimes for athletes it comes naturally. And I tell people if they're feeling good, it's okay to respond to that and go a bit quicker. But if you're not feeling good, you need to reduce your effort and go back to that easy forever level of running, that effort level, because of the impact forces. And those can definitely kind of derail your training if you run too often at this effort.
Yeah, I think, I typically like I prescribe it for long runs, and it's something that, like, if my athletes, once again, if you're feeling the flow on a Thursday, you want to get feisty, like, awesome, but you can't do that every Thursday, and you can't do it every Tuesday. You know, workouts aside, like, you do have to, sometimes you do have to say, even though I feel good, I'm going to respond to this feeling by still going intentionally slow because I understand aerobic development.
Great. So the next kind of the third category here are hill workouts and hill strides. And many of you guys are really familiar with these, but basically 1 or 2 days a week and sometimes 3, depending on the athlete and what phase of training we're in. We're going to be on the hill, and these usually look like 15 to 30-second bouts of work, generally 4 to 6 repetitions, depending on the athlete again and where you are in your phase of training. I usually don't prescribe more than that because they're very high intensity. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like
this is max output.
Yeah, this is that like moment in your training week where you're going hard. You're really pushing on each interval to get your max output out there. The reason why we do this on a hill is because it reduces impact forces, because you're closer to the ground when you run uphill. So it's going to reduce a lot of likelihood of injury. The other reason that we're doing this on a hill is because you also have the added benefit of that resistance of going up for strength, for building strength in a very safe environment. And these are like bread and butter workouts. No matter where you are in your training, what you're building for, you're almost always going to have a hill workout every week. These are super important, and you should feel the burn on every interval.
I know for me, I always like to go do these on a hill right outside of town that kind of like links the town part of Carbondale to the very ranchy part of Carbondale. And I know I'm doing mine right because almost every time I do them, I end up like leaned over on my, like with my hands on my knees, and inevitably some like rancher pulls over to ask me if I'm okay and if I need a ride. And that's when I'm like, nailed it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Quick question around the hills from Nikki. Hey, Nikki.
Guys.
Let's see. What if you need a little more recovery time after going hard uphill? Yeah, this is such a great question. So, yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Nikki. I don't ask my athletes in most cases, like 80% of the time, you're doing hills that are 15 to 30 seconds long to have a recovery period. I want you to take as much recovery time as you need. And for each person, that looks a little bit different. Usually for me, I walk down the hill. I start at the same spot and I go to about the same spot and I walk down. And towards the end of the hill, when I'm getting around to the time where I'm going to start again and I'm finally feeling like I can breathe and that I'm recovered, I might jog for a second or two just to like loosen up, and then I'll go up again. And the idea is you ramp your speed up as you go. So that way, if your interval is say 20 seconds long, you should be reaching about like your max output levels around 10 seconds in and trying to just hold them.
You don't want to taper off dramatically at like
Right.
10 seconds or 15 seconds. You don't want it to be like a big old bell curve. You want it to be like a, ease into it and hold on.
Yeah, try to ease into it a little bit. You can take that first 1 or 2 repetitions easier than the last few. I really like to have my athletes finish with the best hill stride last, because these are pretty impactful and pretty high intensity. So I don't want you to go out there and just try to crush the first one and then struggle through the other 3 or 4 or 5. You just easy. The first one, is at that moderate hard, but you want to feel out of breath even on the first one.
The reason we don't specify a recovery period for hill intervals is because we want you to take as much time as you need to fully get your heart rate kind of like back to base so that you can go as hard as you can every single time.
Yeah.
And that way you're getting maximum output, because what we're trying to do is reinforce the mechanics of top end running. So if you're running while tired or not correctly recovered, you're reinforcing suboptimal form, you're reinforcing suboptimal output. So you're teaching your body to be less good at running. We want to teach it to be more good at running.
Exactly. So those biomechanics really matter. And so just briefly to kind of get into that, because it is important. Slight forward lean. You want to power from the glutes and the big muscle groups. So you don't want to overuse your calves on these hills. It's important to have your shoulders back and your head up, looking up the hill. You don't want to look down at your feet because that restricts your diaphragm and your airway. It makes it much harder to breathe. You want to get as much oxygen in as you can, because these are really hard and they they don't feel great. These are like your 2 minutes of really intense training that definitely hurts. So do yourself as much of a favor as you can. I like to tell people we're not doing this isn't a bounding exercise. So make sure that our cadence is good. The cadence should be similar as to your regular running cadence when you're out on your easy run, if not a little bit more. So you should have a few more kind of rotations of your legs.
And that's why we don't do stairs as a replacement for hills, because those are biomechanically different.
Yeah, they really are. Also, the other thing that athletes think a lot about is the grade. We tell people 6 to 8% is great, but anywhere in that range is fine. Not everybody has a 6, 7, or 8% graded hill. Just know that if you're coming back from an injury, if your hill is 4% or 3%, that's not that steep. So your impact forces at higher output level are increased. So if your hill is steeper, you have less impact forces, but there's more resistance. So you will get out of breath faster and you will have to lower your output levels a little bit to compensate for the steeper hill, because the steeper the hill, the harder it is to run and the more exhausting it is.
Yeah, so for our aspiring mountain athletes, steeper is not always better when it comes to just reinforcing top-end biomechanical output.
I think somewhere around 8% is a really good kind of marriage of steepnesses, where it's steep enough to mimic a lot of trail grade and that grade that you'll find in a race, but it's not 6% or less. Maybe you can really run fast on it, especially for athletes who are a bit stronger, and so that might even have too much impact force, and be less like what you're going to encounter in the race. And because these are very neuromuscular, it does benefit you to use a grade that might be similar to your race, and these can be done on trail. For those of you who
don't do it on hyper technical trail.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it on super technical trail where you have to watch your footwork, because we want to look up the hill and keep our airways open. And again, hopefully we're not getting into the area of overcomplicating things, but to simplify it, you can do these runs on, wherever works for you. If you prefer to do your runs on trail, that's awesome. Just find a hill and hopefully it's not super technical, so you can keep your head up and looking up the hill. It really helps.
I always tell my athletes to think about the muscles you would use to twerk, and those are the muscles that you want to activate when going uphill.
That's great. All right.
If you
cool.
don't know what those are, you can Google this.
You could Google twerking.
And your day will be made.
All right. Cool. Yeah, we're breezing through this. So strides, fast strides. These are like so fun. If you have hills and they're not so fun, these are like the friendlier version of the hill. And it's where we really get comfortable with going fast and we start to build economy and translate the strength that we build on the hill into kind of like sustainable speed that eventually trickles down and helps us build our easy effort and make easy running feel easier and faster. Most of the time, strides are, again, similar to your hills. They're anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds, depending on you and where you are in your training and your athletic history. But for me and the athletes I coach, I like to think about this in terms of like rhythm work and getting comfortable going faster, not necessarily about going as fast as you can.
In fact, it is very much not about that.
Why?
Well, so if you're sprinting, then you're reinforcing sprinting, and you are pretty much never in an ultra going to purely sprint. So it's like not a very useful skill to practice. If you stride, which is when you run as fast as you can without sprinting, maintaining good form, thinking about light, quick strides, and being like tall and light, then you're reinforcing good running form. So you're teaching your body to run better, but you're not teaching it to sprint.
Right. So if we get into the habit of doing any of our runs, like Zoe mentioned kind of on the hill section, doing any of our runs where we're so tired that our form is breaking down, we're going to then reinforce those and kind of build those neuromuscular pathways, which aren't going to help us build our economy and our efficiency. We want to reinforce the best possible movements and most efficient movements that we can. And generally, when we're running at that point before form breaks down, the body is naturally moving in its most efficient way, which is why these fast strides are so important, because we're getting ourselves into that kind of that effort level and that area where we are most efficient.
Yeah. So once again, like you don't want to be totally sprinting. You don't want to have like the, super choppy, stiff arms and be like, grimacing and have like neck bulging at like hulking out, the running version of hulking out. Like that is not what we want. We want it to be like fun. And I always tell my athletes to think about running like a kid at recess and be like light and loose and playful, and not like, it shouldn't be like, I'm not gonna say it's comfortable, but it shouldn't hurt. You're not putting the hurt on.
Yeah, you should be able, think of these as like smooth accelerations.
Yeah.
And you should be able to drop back into your easy effort between each interval and feel very comfortable kind of going back to that.
You should not want
pace.
To die at the end.
Exactly. That's why there's like, okay, we're going to do 20 seconds on and 1 or 2 minutes off, or 20 seconds on, 90 seconds off. We should be able to fall back into the rhythm of that easy effort and then accelerate kind of towards that harder effort or that like that speedier effort and come back. We're working on our turnover. We're working on our biomechanics. We're working on just generally and very simply getting comfortable going faster.
Yeah. It's basically just practicing running. It's like a really stupid thing to practice, but you have to.
And they're supposed to be more fun. They're
fun.
more fun than the hills. Trust me.
I like hills.
You like hills?
I love hills because then you can just like walk.
I don't like hills.
After.
Hills make me so tired. They crush me. Oh man, I should do hills more like you. So, okay, thank you, CT.
Yeah, let's get a quick poll. Hills versus strides. Everyone sound off in the chat. I want to see where we're at on this.
I think people...
Team hills, team hills, team hills.
Come on, strides.
Yeah, screw you, strides. No one likes you.
All right.
Got a bunch of mountain athletes on the call.
Everybody likes hills.
Everyone likes hills.
See? I respect you guys.
Because you can like walk around after.
I like to keep it moving forward. All right. You guys are great. Thank you. Yeah, everybody loves hills.
Downhills.
Downhills. All right.
The people have spoken and they want hills.
I'm with CT again. It's all about the downhill. I only go to the top of the hill in order to go down. I suggest everybody do some downhilling this week.
Fun caveat, because we have time, is I was testing this bizarre pair of shoes for Hoka, which is specifically made for downhill running, which is ridiculous because to go downhill, you necessarily have to go uphill wearing a pair of shoes that are incredibly awkward to go uphill on. They're like, I'm sure you've like seen them on the internet. They have this like, they look like a Skechers shape up, but like on steroids and from space. It has this like epic heel, just like it sticks out like 15 centimeters from behind the shoe. And I had to do a bunch of downhill intervals to test them out. And I've never felt like my body was so broken.
Oh my God, those sound weird. You should have just done gondola laps at Aspen. Take the gondola to the top of the mountain and run down. And then just take the gondola to the top and then
they would just like
down.
Find like a broken puddle of human with like a Hoka sticking out.
That would not be good for your
legs. I like walk down the bottom of Aspen, you know, that really like the last pitch, I just like creep down.
That's how you, oh man, that last pitch on Aspen Mountain.
It's so sketchy. I think it's really scary.
I
think it's scary. It's like trying to run down the second flat iron. Yeah. It's messed up.
Not fun.
It's not fun. Going up is fun.
All right. Well, let's get back on track. We have one more topic, one more kind of point to make here. Workouts. These are number 5 of 5, simplifying the training. Workouts are, this is so broad. But this is anything.
We could do a whole, and we probably will do a whole call on workouts, like decoding your workout.
This is everything from like tempo runs to longer hill sessions of like 1 minute to maybe 3 minutes or even 4 or 5 minutes. Or
that thing that you do for like 15 to 30 minutes on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's there are so many ways to do this. Ladders, combos.
Do you have a favorite?
I'm for my athletes, I think combo workouts are the most successful. I don't use the tempo as much on Wednesdays, but sometimes on Saturday. And I really like 2-minute hills.
I like 3-minute hills. Really like them. So sorry for all my athletes.
I feel bad for anyone that Zoe coaches.
That's what happens when you sign up for a mountain ultra. I like that, and I do like I'm really liking combo workouts, but also like I love like 8 by 2 minutes fast, 2 minutes easy. That's like a ball. Like you could do that every Wednesday for a year and totally improve as an athlete.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, and that's why I want to talk about workouts. There are so many different workouts that you can do. Yes, there's nothing I hate more than the 3-minute hill as well, Derek.
So sorry, Derek. You put up with a lot. I think I gave him like a 3-week hill.
Those are tough, but hills are amazing, and so are many other workouts for building economy. We love to use hills for athletes too because they reduce a lot of impact forces. So we can start to build you up as runners and help to build your overall capacity and work on very specific energy zones or work towards specific adaptations that we want you to achieve in order to be more fit and or to prepare for races. We can do them on hills in a way that is less risky than to do them on really flat, fast terrain or to have you go to the track and things like that. There's a lot of risk involved in running in that terrain. So especially,
I thought running was such a dangerous sport.
It is dangerous. It's so impactful. I mean, it's just crazy. Just think about all the pounding.
Yeah. I mean, when I like first started running, I was like, how does anyone ever get injured doing this? You're going in one direction super slowly. And then I've like fully turned my skeleton like inside out running. So like I get it now.
We can go full circle with this, but I want to make one last point about the workouts. The workouts are there to help you improve your fitness. They are not there for you to prove your fitness.
Yeah.
So the workouts are supposed to be tough. They are there in very purposeful places. And the work that you're doing in those workouts is either supposed to help you maintain an adaptation that you've made or to continue to improve or to create new adaptation. It's always done on a foundation of work before it. So when train with us, you're never going to get your hardest workout at the beginning of a training block. I've never done that with
Which is why we
any of
also
my
don't do like
athletes.
fitness tests or anything. Like
Yeah.
we truly do not care.
You build in to the bigger workouts, and we're not concerned with your output levels as much as you hitting the prescribed intensity levels in order to get the adaptation that we're looking for you to achieve. And sometimes we're going to do the same workout a few times, or in different cycles, you may see the same workout a few times. And that's because we need to maintain adaptations that we've made. It's very important in order for you to continue to grow.
It's also kind of like the same man never stands in the same river, right? Like every time you come back to a workout, you're going to be a fundamentally different athlete. You're faster, you're stronger, you're at a different point in your training block. So the adaptations that you gain from the same workout, we never give everyone the same workout over and over. I mean, except for like strides, right? Like you can do the same thing a ton of times and still really, really improve.
I think that's absolutely true. Oh, Chelsea asked what a combo workout is.
I love combos.
Yeah, and we won't get too much into specifics. Maybe we'll do a blog post on combo workouts. But essentially a combo workout would be a workout that works on more than one specific adaptation. So for example, an athlete might start with 4 by 1 minute hills. And the idea is to kind of reinforce kind of like max power output for 1 minute at aerobic threshold or a little bit higher. So like that hard but sustainable effort. And then after that set of intervals is over, to go out and then do like 4 by 1 minute fast on flat, which is to like under fatigue be able to turn your legs over and achieve high output on flat terrain. Or another one that like I am really big for working with ultra runners prepare for longer races is to do the hill workout and then on fatigued legs do a tempo workout.
Mm-hmm.
I
love making people do tempos when they're tired. So everyone.
I think they're called combos because they work on more than one adaptation, but also because they can be really mentally tough too. So we're working on the mental side of things as well. We're working on fatigue resistance and a score of other things. I think one of the biggest things that helps ultra runners is that when you finally make the leap between being in the later stages of a race and walking and being in the later stages of a race and being able to still run.
Yeah.
So the purpose of a lot of those combo workouts is to get your legs to turn over and to reinforce a lot with your mind, because we're building these neuromuscular pathways. And the more we reinforce that and the stronger and more defined those pathways are, the easier it is for you when you're tired to still run instead of walk, because the run is the default. Oh man, combos are amazing for so many of those things. I think especially for ultra runners.
Yeah, that's something that I usually reserve for more advanced ultra athletes for sure, just because it's not going to be as beneficial. Like if you're, just trying to build that aerobic base, or if like we're still working on speed, then it's not going to be as beneficial for me to make you tired and then torture you on a hill. Like that's just going to be a bad time. And then it's just going to make you good at being tired, which is not a positive training adaptation.
Yes, of course not. But also fatigue resilience
some amount of
is very important for ultras too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, great. I think just to kind of sum everything up, we've got the easy run, which is your bread and butter, like 80 to 90% of your runs, easy, conversational. If you've ever wondered why people can run 100 miles a week and more, it's because they're really good at running really, really, really easy. So if you ever got any question that you're running too hard, you probably are. Do like me, try to run as easy as you can every day, and don't look at your watch.
Yeah.
Don't assign a pace to it. Just say like easy is this effort or this feeling that I can carry this run for as long as I want. And the idea isn't always to like finish that run fatigued. We want to finish that run feeling generally good. We've got like the flow state, steady Freddy run, which is our response to kind of feeling really good out there. Again, it's 2 sentences conversational. It's chitty. It's not like that chitty chatty kind of level, but it's
chitty run.
It's chitty run. It's not chit chatty, but you could still have a conversation. Yeah.
It's not selfie speed.
Selfie speed.
It's above selfie speed, but
I like that.
below tempo.
You have your hill workouts, which are, these are going to be the most intense workouts that we do. Take as much time as you need between each interval. Don't worry as much about the grade of the hill. Worry more about your biomechanics. Fast feet, head up, shoulders back. Use the big muscle groups. Strides, they are all about getting comfortable going fast.
But not sprinting.
We should be able to fall back into the rhythm of the easy run between each stride. We're not trying to accumulate fatigue on these. We're just trying to get comfortable going fast. And then we've got the workouts, and this is where we build our fitness. We're not trying to prove anything. These are going to hurt. They help us grow both physically and, from a physiological perspective, and also from a mental perspective too. I really like using these for, building self-belief and stuff like that, especially the longer hill intervals.
There's a limit on how much physical adaptation you can get from any given workout, right? Just because you're constrained by physics, essentially. There is no limit to the amount of self-belief that you can gain from any given workout.
Yeah.
You can truly go from whatever to invincible in a single workout, but you're never going to go from whatever to Eliud Kipchoge. You can mentally do that, but not physically. So don't overlook the enormous mental benefits of workouts.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've heard time and time again from my coach and other really prolific coaches is your attitude and the way that you perceive your workout is often going to lead to how you feel about yourself during that workout. So if your workout looks hard, yes, it's going to be hard, but no, you've done hard things before, and it's all about hitting prescribed intensities. Don't assign specific output levels, like specific pace markers to what you're doing. Just go out there and do your best. That's always going to be enough. Great.
Yay.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and it was really nice to hear from Lindsay and Chelsea earlier on.
And
thanks,
all my
guys.
hill people
You're doing
out there.
awesome. And I can't believe it. The consensus is everybody loves the hills.
Hills.
That's awesome. You guys are so strong. Cool. Well, we're gonna be chatting, chit-chatty, easy run style on Friday for the Q&A. If you guys have questions, please.
Because if you don't, we'll just make stuff up.
Yeah. Please let us know if you've got questions. We really appreciate it. For those of you who have been sending questions, you are really appreciated. You make our jobs a lot easier. And we want to talk about all this stuff, whatever it is, life, training, habits,
literally ask us
routine,
any question.
Anything you want to know.
We've got amazing opinions on everything.
Zoe is the most opinionated though, so.
It's totally true.
All right, you guys have a great night. Thank you so much. We'll see you on Friday. Have a great week of training. Have fun.